I'd like to bring this meeting to order. 7 p.m. Pittsylvania County General District Courtroom, Edwin R. Shields Courthouse Edition, 11 Bank Street. At 7 p.m., I'd like to welcome everybody tonight. Thank you for showing up tonight on questionable conditions. I'd like to have a roll call. Mr. Cluster.
All right, Mr. Barber.
Here.
Mr. Blackstock. Mr. Farmer.
Here.
Mr. Scarce.
Here.
Mr. Warren.
Here.
Dr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Davis.
Present. I would like everyone to recognize a moment of silence, please. All right, thank you. All of those who can, if you will, stand with me as we pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving on to the agenda items. Are there any agenda items to be added to the agenda by any board member?
Mr. Chairman, under items to be added to the agenda, item 14C, White Fall Farm landfill tire fee reduction.
Okay. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Barber. Is there any discussion? Hearing none.
Please cast your vote. All right, all votes have been cast. I'll now close the vote.
It carries unanimous. Approved. Mr. McCluster? Oh. So we have the vote. So now moving on to number 7, consent agenda.
We amended the agenda. Now for 6, we just need a motion, second, and discussion to approve.
So we're amended it. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve the agenda with the addition.
Second.
Thank you.
All right, please cast your vote. I'm going to close the vote.
Carries unanimous. So we to go to item number 7 now, council? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Consent agenda minutes, January 15th, 2019. Finance Committee meeting, January the 15th, 2019. Work session and business meeting, January the 28th, 2019. Legislative Committee meeting, February the 4th, 2019. Economic Development Committee meeting and Property Building Committee meeting, and February on that date, 12th on 2019. Animal Welfare Committee meeting was held. Ms. Kaylin McCluster.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
All right, please cast your vote. All right, I'm going to now close the vote.
Carries unanimous. Is there any discussion on this one, Counselor? Okay.
Yes, sir. You can move to number 8, presentations.
Moving to item 8, I would like for the board, if you will, to meet me down in the front.
I think this is a carryover to an item that's not on the agenda, just a special recognition under consent.
Supervisors. We're going to present Bob Warren for being the chairman and doing such an outstanding job in 2017 to 2018. Congratulations. Do you have anything you'd like to say, Mr. Warren?
I didn't know about this. It was my privilege to serve the citizens. I feel honored and humbled to have been entrusted that by these gentlemen to have chaired for 2 years. I can tell you these gentlemen are very passionate about representing the citizens, and they all do an outstanding job, not only for their individual districts, but they have wider visions and see the county as a whole. And I truly appreciate having the opportunity to have served with them, and I hope I served them and represented them in a manner they would have me do. Thank you.
Our next presentation is the Department of Social Services update. Mr. Smitherman.
Yes, sir, we've asked our new DSS director, Mr. Christopher Spain, to come forward and give us an assessment of his first couple months on the job. One thing that we aim to do better than we've done in the past is being a better partner with the Department of Social Services, and we want to be better informed about the challenges and successes that they're having. So this will be the first of a periodic series of updates from Mr. Spain to the board.
Thank you. Mr. Spain? Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, distinguished board members, and Mr. Smitherman. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to join you tonight just to give you an update and answer any questions that you might have with regard to our status and where we're headed, where we've been. As you know, I've been in place for a little less than 2 months now, and during that time, I've spent a lot of in-the-weeds moments. I believe that's the best way to learn the job of those in my world. When I was CPS program manager with the state, the state hotline was part of my program, and I actually sat and answered calls, mostly from Fairfax, but I answered calls for the hotline. I think it's best to learn every position and know it well. During that time, I've certainly, I would call, stumbled across a number of policy issues and practice issues that need some attention. Among those are some benchmarks that we're not meeting, I'll be quite frank, but we're going to meet. And one way that we're going to do that is partnering with the regional office, with the Virginia Department of Social Services, and we've already started doing that. They came down actually last Friday, they were with us to talk about some things on the family services side. I've got a couple of benefit programs consultants coming in March, the beginning of March, to talk about child care, our SNAP program, and we're in constant communication about Medicaid with regard to expansion. With regard to expansion, I'll let you know that we've seen since November 1 to date, well, through January, we've seen an increase of 946 applications that we attribute to expansion. We've seen more enrollees than the 946, but we attribute that to the expansion. We had been targeted to receive about 3,400 in Pittsylvania County total, but it's increased from 85 in November to 227 in December and over 600 in January. So it's been an upward tick with regard to the number of applications and enrollees, those approved. With regard to our SNAP enrollment, we have seen a slight decline, which is interesting, about a 3% decline since November. Looking at a 3-month period to compare apples to apples. So very interesting that we've gone from 440 to 3926 with regard to SNAP. We gauge our participation rate by the economy, so maybe that's an indicator that the economy's slightly improved. But kind of going back to the agency and looking at the organizational structure, currently we have 14 vacancies. And that does not include seasonal staff, interns, and part-time staff. It only includes those full-time permanent positions that we have. So that's about a fifth of the agency that's vacant right now. No assistant director at the moment. We have 25 persons in the benefit programs arena with one supervisor. So looking at the structure of the agencies, probably a need to do some restructuring. And so I'm looking at that very closely and what the needs are. There are some positions that probably do not need to be filled that we could repurpose to better allocate our positions. So I'm in the process now of filling those vacancies and looking, those that need to be filled, for example, fraud investigator. We've made a selection and we'll be taking that to the local board for approval next week, as well as a family services specialist that we've found that we've recruited that we believe will bring a lot of value to the agency. This person comes with experience in the area of child protective services, which is so very important because in the world of child protective services, we experience about one valid complaint a day. And as you may know, since May of 2002, Virginia has exercised a differential response system, which means that when a CPS complaint is made, if it's a valid complaint, meaning that it's a child under the age of 18, a child that is the caretaker is allegedly to have abused or neglected the child, we have jurisdiction, and under 18, the abuser neglector is in a caretaker role. It occurred in our jurisdiction, and it's actually an abuse or neglect scenario, meaning physical abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, medical neglect. It fits into one of those categories. So in that case, we either track it as a family assessment or investigation if it's a valid complaint. And we're experiencing one valid complaint a day on average, a calendar day on average. So we have currently 2 child protective services workers because in the area of family services, we've got 6 vacancies. So we're working with minimal crew. On the foster care side, we have 31 foster children. There's been a little spike in that because we are, under my leadership, we are not diverting children to relatives without knowing that they're good placements. If a child needs to enter foster care because of an abuse or neglect scenario, if they're unsafe, we're going to do that. Then we'll evaluate the best placement for the child and talk to the court about that. We're no longer practicing diversionary, as in the world of social services we call diversionary practice, to say go with grandmother, aunt, uncle, whomever, and then walk away to divert foster care. Foster care can be a traumatic experience for children, but so can returning back to an abuse scenario, which is often what we see when we don't wrap services around children. So we want to make sure that if it is a parental placement, that we've vetted that as a safe environment for the child, and we've wrapped services around and we stay engaged. That is one area that we are working on is engagement of families, engagement of foster families, so that when we do have to remove children, when there's a real need, and there's not always a need, we've diverted children in the sense of finding that there's not a need. Had a case where Roanoke contacted us and said, you need to remove this child to get medical treatment. Where's mom and dad? We don't need to do that. We need to find mom and dad, and that's what we did, and they consented to the treatment. So we're not knee-jerk. We're moving cautiously with children's lives, but we're still engaging families. We're still following up and making sure that children are safe. But it's a work in progress, to say the least. Practices are changing in the world of Pittsylvania County Social Services. I would like to add that with those 31 foster children, we have 2 foster care workers and a supervisor. One of those foster care workers is brand new, started the middle of January. The other was in training last week and is getting very basic training behind her. Part of the restructuring that I've done so far is to move staff away from supervision under family because I had that scenario, to be quite frank, and also training. I can't have supervisors supervising staff if they haven't been trained in that area. So that's caused some shiftiness with regard to the organizational chart to ensure that we're accountable to supervisors and to staff. Part of our supervisory, or really the heart of supervision in the agency now, is reflective supervision. It's an opportunity, it's a style of supervision that's very popular this day and time, particularly in human services agencies. It's less of an approach of, I'm the director and this is how we're going to do it. There are times that it does have to be that way. When we have to make decisions, and what we do is very serious, and we have to make sure that I'm accountable, buck stops with me. But we try to engage staff. Supervisors, I with supervisors and staff directly, because as I said, I'm in the weeds. I'll always be in the weeds. I love the work I do, but also holding supervisors accountable to their direct reports and making sure that when they approach their staff, that they're taking a moment to reflect on the work that we do, respective of the area of the agency, whether it be benefit programs or family services, and they're giving the employee an opportunity to buy into what they're doing, the work that they do. And then they're collaborating. Often we see that workers, they know the work. They're in the field, they're doing the work, they know what their needs are, they know what their family's needs are. And so collaborating with them, both with regard to their work with families, but also in the agency, areas that they feel that they have knowledge and they can provide some support and ideas that may grow the agency. And then the third is having regular communication. Those are the three pillars of reflective supervision. So making sure that we're having supervision, that we're having face-to-face contact, me with supervisors and the opportunity to have that with staff, and certainly supervisors with their direct reports, so that we stay in communication. The importance of that in our world is because we want that parallel process with our families. Just like a worker may go and speak with their supervisor about what they're experiencing in the field, a CPS worker in the field, or a foster care worker, or a benefit program specialist working with a client. We want them to bring that to the supervisor, for the supervisor to help them reflect on what they're experiencing. But we want that worker to work with their family the same way. We don't want workers to bully their families or to push them. We know that families are experts on themselves, and they can often find the answers themselves to protect their families. They need our guidance, they need our support, they need our direction, but they're experts on themselves, and we know that. And we know that often staff are experts on what they do, and we want to value them for what they bring while holding them accountable to follow the policies, the laws, and the standards that have been set. And so we measure those standards in a myriad of ways. I've provided a few statistics, not to overwhelm you, but a few statistics I've thrown out tonight with regard to our numbers. There are a whole lot more that we look at. We have programs that are databases that we enter information into, and then we can extract reports and they tell us how we're doing. Because if we document, it reflects in our statistics. If we don't put it in there, we haven't done the work. Often what lawyers will tell you, if it's not in writing, it never happened. Our world is very much that way. So we monitor through a variety of databases, creating a dashboard to come in May. So on the 5th of March, there's a meeting in Lynchburg. The regional office has coordinated a meeting for local directors, county administrators, and local board chairs to attend that meeting to talk about this dashboard, which will be a subset of measures that are being put out now. For local directors, there are a lot of different areas we could go into with regard to statistics, but this will be a high-level subset of measures in which to kind of show how the agencies are doing across the state, Pittsylvania County being one of them. So Mr. Smitherman has graciously agreed to attend, and so he will have that direct information come May. And so March 5th will be a meeting to talk about how that works and kind of explain some of that data. The last thing I'll mention is that part of that training, part of that cultural change around engagement are what is the Virginia Department of Social Services practice model that was developed in 2008. And out of that study, out of that cohort of local agencies within the Commonwealth came 11 skill sets that are deemed extremely important in the world that we're in. And at the center of those skill sets is engagement. And I've already mentioned that. Among those is partnering and collaboration, and which is so very important in the work we do. And so I have invited family services trainer to come in and maybe coordinate with the planning district, but certainly with Pittsylvania Social Services to teach those practice profiles. Even though it was 2008, they've never really made their way to every local agency, to the frontline staff. And so we want to make sure that they learn that model. And there's optimal practice that comes out of that model, and that's where we want to be. We don't want to be substandard, we don't want to be mediocre, we want to be optimal in the practices that we are committed to. And how we do our work is as important as the work we do. So it's very important to hold ourselves to a standard, and training is number one. We've got some training deficits we've got to take care of. So that's one of them. So that's, in a nutshell, kind of the art and science behind the agency right now. There's a lot more that I could say, but I don't want to burn up any more time. I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of what's happening. Yes, sir.
Mr. Spain, thank you for your report. At the outset of your comments, I thought I heard you say that there is a vacancy in the assistant administrator's position.
Yes, sir, the assistant director position, yes, sir.
Is Cheryl Fisk not?
She's retired. She retired at the end of January. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I assumed maybe, or just took for granted that that was known.
Okay.
But she did. She retired at the end of January. She was out most of the month of January using leave, but she left that position vacant. And I do think that position is very important to the agency based on the size of the agency and based on the need for a lot of other things that I haven't gone into, but strategic planning being one of those. We really want to get, there's a philosophy of getting to know an agency for 3 to 5 years before you really look at strategic planning. But I think in this case, we really need to start. We have enough. We have enough feedback from the state. We have enough history with the agency that we know that we have a direction we need to go in. And I think we have plenty of information to plug into a strategic plan with a number of pillars. Well, not a number of pillars, but we can certainly establish a pillar like communication, collaboration, growing capacity, such as filling those positions, repurposing positions in the agency, and doing our work efficiently. We want to be efficient. We want to help, our clients. I got a complaint the other day that somebody called, why am I calling this person back? Why am I dealing with this? Because, when somebody calls to ask for a crisis application, which is currently we're in crisis season, they shouldn't be calling me, that person that was telling me about this. They should be leaving a message on a voicemail, extension 280, and then somebody else comes along and gets that voicemail and mails an application to a citizen that wants to apply for crisis. That's very inefficient. It's not good service, and it costs taxpayers money to mail these things that we could email, or we could fax, or we could explain how to apply online if they're inclined to do that. It would be easier for the client, cost savings, and it's direct communication, and it doesn't waste time, and it doesn't take the opportunity of, I didn't get that message, I didn't hear that well, and so I'm not sure if it's Smith Street or Smith Street with a Y. I don't know where to send this. I didn't get the zip code. And so we're not serving clients effectively, and we're certainly not doing it in the most efficient way. And that's just one example of a practice that needs to change. So these are in the weeds things that I'm bringing up, but they're very important. Every little thing that we can do to make a citizen's life easier and get them the support they need, we're going to do that. I was in communication with the Danville, Pittsylvania County Community Services Board today, looking at bringing somebody in 1 day or 2 days a month to help fill out applications, to help enroll Medicaid recipients. We want pregnant women on Medicaid, we want them to know that they're entitled to dental coverage. Dental coverage is so important for everybody, but certainly a pregnant woman, we want them to take advantage of that. And we know that pregnant women often don't know that they have that benefit. And they have that 60 days beyond delivery. So we want them to know. We want to get this word. Because only about 2% of the money that's spent is local money. Most of the millions of dollars that are spent on social services in Pittsylvania County in the course of a year, very little of it is local money. It's federal and state money coming into the community that's then going to the grocery stores through the form of SNAP and going to physicians. I'm not saying we're a moneymaker, but we are helping to sustain the community and meeting the needs of the community with regard to health, wellness, and nutrition. And so it is so important at what we do, and I'm so honored to be in the role that I'm in. And I ask you, please do everything you possibly can to hold me accountable, my agency accountable, and call on me if there's anything I can do.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you, Mr. Spain. I like the title of accountability / efficiency. Thank you for a job well done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Moving on to our next item is the hearing of the citizens. Each person addressing the board under hearing of the citizens shall be a resident or landowner of the county or the registered agent of such resident or landowner. Each person shall step up, give his or her name in the district in an audible tone of voice for the record, and unless further time is granted by the chairman, shall limit his or her address to 3 minutes. No person shall be permitted to address the board more than once during hearing of the citizens. All remarks shall be addressed to the board as a body and not to an individual member thereof. Hearing of the citizens shall last for a maximum of 45 minutes. Any individual that is signed up to speak during said section who does not get the opportunity to do so because of the aforementioned time limit shall be given speaking priority at the next board meeting, absent chairman's approval. No person shall be able to speak who has not signed up. And our first guest is Ms. Deborah Galden, and she's from the Callens District, so I'll just go and mention that for you. May you step to the podium, please?
Thank you all. Members of the board, tonight I come to you as one person, but for the voice of many citizens of the Pittsylvania County who are against any money that's been taken from the children's services to go toward the animal shelter. I understand that the money allotted to go into the shelter is $362,831 due to overfunding. We cannot understand how any department would have monies that they would not use to improve that department, but rather give it away. Once it's gone, it's hard to get back for further improvements. A few things mentioned for food of thought for all the board members. Have all our county schools been asked if all their needs have been met for the special needs of our children? Does our county schools have in place any type of programs for autism children or at home programs? Does our county have set up home therapy such as speech or occupational home, visits for educational and nutrition for special need children? Does all our county schools have in place educational programs on medical nutritional for children with special needs? Do we have educational programs set up to educate the regular classrooms in order to educate the teachers and children when special need children are able to be moved into a regular classroom? The more we know about ADHD, autism, and etc., the better we can understand each other and how to react with each other to help one another. I've been informed that the CSA program has met the needs of its children, but should we be content with met the needs? Why not use this extra money to excel in programs to cover all schools in the county and lead as an example? Everyone wants to feel needed and have a place in society and feel that they contribute to their own well-being without the proper skills developed at early ages. Some children will fall through the cracks and be left through the cracks left open by poor funding or no funding. If we are to look to our children in the future for us, that we need to give them every means possible to show this. And I'm asking the school board members and the county administrator to please visit all schools, listen to what they have to say before making your decision. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Golden. Now, moving on to our next agenda. There are no rezoning cases tonight. Other public hearings, there are no other public hearings tonight. Unfinished business, there are no unfinished business on this meeting tonight. Now, item 12, new business, resolution number 2019-01-01, Kylewood Court VDOT resolution adoption. Mr. Vaden Hunt, Squire.
Yes. Kylewood Court is currently a privately maintained road in the county's, I believe, Chatham Blair's magisterial district. Its residents have requested the county assist them in requesting to VDOT to take Kylewood Court in the state roadway system for maintenance purposes. Attached in your board packet is Resolution 2019-0201, which details their request. This resolution has been approved by VDOT, and VDOT has indicated that this road has been built to state standards, and it is available to be taken in at no cost to the county. So county staff recommends to the board approve the attached resolution as presented.
Mr. Chairman, I move that approval of the adoption of resolution number 2019-02-01 as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Right. Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast. I'm going to close the vote.
Item passes unanimously. Resolution 2019-02-02, dealing with Gretna Fire and Rescue merger resolution approval. Mr. Slimp.
Mr. Slimp's not here, but I'll be handling it. I met with him today about it, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
And I welcome Mr. Farmer to jump in if he has anything to add, because I know he's been involved with this too. Currently, the Gretna Rescue Squad is the licensed EMS agency for the Gretna area. Recently, the Gretna Fire Department and the Gretna Rescue Squad have agreed to merge their operations, primarily due to manpower shortages. This merger will benefit the citizens of Gretna and give both entities more trained volunteers. Currently, the Gretna Fire Department has 9 members in the EMT class. In order for this merger to move forward with the Virginia Office of EMS, a resolution from the Board of Supervisors approving the merger is required. The resolution will allow the newly merged agency to apply for a state EMS license up to the level of advanced life support transport. For your reference and review, a copy of the proposed merger resolution is attached. Mr. Slimp is fully supportive of this merger. There are no financial impacts to the county at this time. County staff recommends the board approve the attached Gretna Fire Department and Gretna Rescue Squad merger resolution as presented.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the attached fire department and Gretna Rescue Squad merger resolution as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Blackstock. Is there any discussion?
I'd just like to add Chief Hogan and the captains of the rescue squad. They kept me involved as much as they could prior to tonight about this. Of course, Mr. Slimp was involved the entire time. And I just think it's outstanding to see two entities work together for the common goal of the citizens to have a quicker response rate, have more bodies available to answer the calls. So I fully support this. I think it's going to be great for the citizens in the Gretna area.
Thank you, Mr. Farmer. I believe I do agree.
All right.
Hearing no other discussion? Okay.
Please cast your vote. I will now close the vote.
Item passes unanimously. Resolution VIR-02-03, VIR RIFR adoption. Mr. Smitherman?
Yes, sir. Thank you. As you are all aware, the Economic Development Committee met, I believe, last week and heard a presentation, maybe it was the week before, by Ms. Connie Nyholm talking about the economic impact, positive economic impact on Pittsylvania County created by Virginia International Raceway. We heard about some challenges that they are having and learned a lot about the importance of the facility to our greater economic well-being. A couple months prior, we received a request by the Halifax Board of Supervisors requesting that we consider entering into negotiations with Halifax and the city of Danville on possibly creating a regional industrial facilities authority to share in the costs and benefits of the future development of the raceway, including the adjacent industrial park. The Economic Development Committee recommended that the Board of Supervisors instruct staff, which includes myself and Mr. Hunt, as well as the chairman, to begin good faith negotiations with the other two parties to determine if it is in the county's best interest to create a RIFA with these two entities. So we're seeking approval of this resolution that empowers us to begin those negotiations.
Thank you for the report, Mr. Smitherman.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve resolution number 2019-02-03 and authorize county staff to commence negotiating a proposed agreement to develop a RIFA with the required corresponding revenue and sharing agreement for the purpose governing bodies involved.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Scarce? Is there any other discussion?
All right, please cast your vote. All right, all votes have been cast. I will now close the vote.
Passes unanimously. Item D, Resolution 2019-02-04, Oak Hill Road Relocation Resolution Adoption. Mr. Sides?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. At a recent Economic Development Committee meeting, our Economic Development Director, Mr. Rowe, indicated the importance of being able to be flexible and to potentially accommodate a very large industry if it comes along for the Berry Hill Mega Park, Southern Virginia mega site at Berry Hill. And part of that was a resolution that the board was willing to consider under the right circumstances the ability to abandon or relocate Oak Hill Road. So the request was that staff develop a resolution to this effect, and attached in your packet tonight is that resolution. And I won't bother to read it, but it just indicates the importance of the Southern Virginia mega site at Berry Hill, the importance of the project to the state and region, indicates that Oak Hill Road is incorporated in both sides within Berry Hill Mega Park for approximately 7,500 feet. And the meat of the substance of the resolution is that the board expresses its willingness to approve the relocation and/or abandonment of the southern portion of Oak Hill Road should such action be necessary to accommodate a major new industry, bringing a high level of both private investment and employment. And in the further resolved in the last paragraph, that would be based on appropriate study to look at traffic, impacts on the community, that type of thing. So this is a resolution that our Economic Development Director feels like will benefit him in the future in marketing the Southern Virginia mega site.
Thank you, Mr. Sides. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve resolution 2019-02-04 as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Any discussion?
I got some.
Yes, sir.
Now, if you read this carefully, it says willingness to approve the relocation and/or abandonment. So we're going to relocate this road according to this resolution. Is that correct, Greg?
It is to
The language
consider,
I'm reading.
both options. If the community were to determine that abandonment is not acceptable, then relocation. So it's the option of relocation or abandonment, but you're not committed either way. It would be based on the community and a study.
Have we, what's the
Chairman.
next step? Are we going to get You heard somebody to give us some proposed designs for the new relocation, that's what I'm.
Yes, we've already had conversations with the West Piedmont Planning District Commission, and the Metropolitan Planning Organization that covers this area is meeting early next month.
Okay.
And that'll be one of the topics of discussion is the appropriate level of study that we can put together to look at what's the best route and how does it impact the community, that type of thing.
Because I'm on board with the relocation, because that southern part of that road is in a curve, it's always been dangerous right there anyway, but I'm not on board with abandonment myself, because we've talked about that. And there ain't many outlets on Berry Hill, and this is one of them, other than going all the way to Callahan's Hills, so it's important to keep this road going.
Right. I think the intention in writing the resolution is that we're willing to consider, no action would take place without coming back before this body again.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. Yes, sir, Mr. Warren.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to echo from the Economic Development Committee. It was highly stressed, and I want the citizens to understand that we were looking at rerouting because of the volume of traffic that is already on that road. We don't want the wrong message to get to the citizens. Our preference from the Economic Development Committee was wholeheartedly that we would look to reroute, not abandon.
The southern end, which is
That's
just
right.
the end of the road.
Yeah, that's correct.
And we actually own the property on both sides of there anyway, so we the property owners, we can reroute that road, I'm sure.
That's right.
Yes, sir, Mr. Scares.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to let Mr. Barber know, I have talked with Dave Hoback. He's director of the West Piedmont Planning District, and he's also the director of MPO, and he believes there are going to be some funds available that we can start the study process. We won't know until we get into that meeting, but he feels like there's going to be some funds available, and it'll be the decision of the direction of that board on where we go with that funding. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm more for relocation, and that's going to be a focus of mine while I'm on the MPO.
Yes, I want to thank you guys for doing your job so well. Any other discussion? Hearing none?
Okay, please cast your vote. All right, all votes have been cast. I'm going to end the vote.
Passes unanimously. Next item is CEDS, SEDS, Economic Development Projects Priority List Approval. Mr. Sides, you're up again.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is a comprehensive economic development strategy priority project list, and many of you may be very familiar with this because this is a yearly effort that we do in cooperation with the West Piedmont Planning District Commission. We have to develop a priority project list and submit this list to the West Piedmont Planning District Commission, who in turn will submit it to the Federal Economic Development Administration. There is incorporated in your packet a list of projects that is very thorough and complete and includes projects from one end of the county to the other and one side to the other. It's been coordinated with our Economic Development Director, Matt Rowe. We involved Susan McCulloch, our new project manager, in reviewing the list as well. So all we need tonight is for the board to approve this proposed list, and we will forward it on to the West Piedmont Planning District Commission, along with a letter that will go to the EDA.
Thank you, Mr. Sides. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the proposed CEDS priority projects list and authorize the county administrator to send the list and required EDA submittal letter to the West Piedmont Planning District Commission to be incorporated into the regional 2019-2020 CEDS update.
Thank you, Mr. Blackstock.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Warren. Is there any other discussion on this item? Hearing none?
Okay, please cast your vote. All votes have been cast. I will now end the vote.
Item carries unanimously. Moving on to the Danville Regional Foundation Grant Appropriations. Wayside Park. Ms. Kimberly Van der Hyde.
Yes, the Recreation Department was recently awarded a $15,000 grant from the Danville Regional Foundation for a master plan for Wayside Park. In fact, I think most of that work has already been done. This did not require a local match. So because of that, of course, it's all grant money. But just so you all are aware, Mark is looking at several different grant options that will require local match, or what we like to refer to as seed money. And so over a 2-year period, he hopes to have at least $150,000 of local money toward this project, which is now looking to be about $750,000. So for us to put in $150 and get that type of return on our investment is wonderful. We love using other people's money.
That's right.
And so just so you all are aware, $72,000 of that $150 is already in your current FY 2019 budget. So you're really not talking about much more, just $78,000 more, which will not have to actually be budgeted until the 21 budget, because we will roll the 72 that's in our FY 19 to 20. So that will be carryover funds. So just for tonight, we just need approval and appropriation of the $15,000 grant funds from DRF.
Thank you, Ms. Vanderhyde.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept the DRF grant in the amount of $15,000 for the Wayside Park project and appropriate these funds to the FY 2019 county budget.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Blackstock. I think the second was Mr. Farmer? No, Mr. Barber. Is there any other discussion?
I'd just like to say that this is a dream come true for the people in the northern Pittsylvania County Hurt area. The Wayside Park has been over there for generations, and at one point was a place of a lot of activity for family type recreational purposes. And it had been basically overlooked for so many years, and for this to finally take hold, and it looks like we probably going to end up with somewhere around $750,000, mostly grant money, to get things in order down and have somebody look after it. This is a dream come true, and I can tell you from somebody that's been over there basically my whole life, except for when I was in the military. This is one of the reasons that I became involved in politics, and one of the reasons that I ran for this board was because I felt this project had been overlooked for so long. And I want to thank the members of this board, Mark Moore, Mr. Smitherman. We recently had some meetings in Danville. Mr. Warren was in attendance and a key part of that. I want to say thank you to everyone that had a part in this. This is really a dream come true.
Thank you, Mr. Blackstock. Any more discussion? Hearing none?
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast. I will now end the vote.
Passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Vanderhyde. Moving on to appointments. The DSS Board, Bannister District, Mr. Charles Miller.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to recommend the name of Mr. Charles Lee Cameron from Gretna, Virginia, member of the Bannister District, to the DSS Board.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Scarce. Is there any discussion?
Just to clarify, this is just to fill an unexpired term that expires in July 2021.
Thank you, Counselor. Hearing no other discussion? Hearing none?
All right, please cast your vote. All votes have been cast. I will now end the vote.
Yes, passes unanimous. Appointment, West Piedmont Planning District Commission. Mr. Sides?
I believe the staff contact would be Mr. Farmer.
Yeah,
you.
this is unusual, but Mr. Scarce and myself serve on the West Piedmont Planning District Commission. And last year, we failed to appoint, there's an opening for a citizen on the county on this position, on this board. And neither Mr. Scarce or I could find a citizen. And other localities have appointed staff members for this. And Mr. Scarce and I both agree that with the work that Mr. Sides does for the county, it's just appropriate that he would be a terrific fit to join us on this committee, so we'd like to appoint Greg Sides. And if you'd like to make a motion, if you'd like me to make that into a motion.
You just made that, I believe.
I will
into a
do so.
motion. Yes, sir. Motion by Mr. Farmer, thank you, and then a second by Mr. Barber.
Like Greg, here's the money. It's
Yeah.
money for Oak Hill Road right there. You're at the right place.
Any other discussion? Hearing none?
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast. I'm going to end the vote.
Passes unanimously. Mr. Sides, you get to ride the bull again.
Thanks, sir.
Item 14, matters from the work session, if any. Legislative Committee recommendations. Esquire, Mr. J. Vaden Hunt.
Yes, we brought this to the legislative committee and the work session now. County staff is recommending the board approve the legislative committee's recommendations as presented. Those include setting public hearings in March for elderly indigent tax exemption proration ordinance and land use application late filing and penalty ordinance to the Hilton rezoning to be initiated by the Board of Supervisors, to have a hearing on the animal public nuisance ordinance, and to implement the dilapidated structural removal matrix that Mr. Sides has worked on. We're not committing to anything tonight, just realize that if you agree with these recommendations, you will be required to have a public hearing in March, and then for some action if you deem appropriate following the lawfully advertised and conducted public hearing.
Thank you, Counselor. What's the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion that we hold the public hearings at the March regular scheduled meeting with the issues, with the items that Mr. Hunt outlined and that we discussed prior in the work session.
Thank you, Mr. Blackstock, starting. Interrupt. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Scares. Is there any other discussion?
I think probably just quickly, we say this from time to time, we have some citizens here that probably have not been here before. We are not just voting on things, it seems, here tonight and briefly read them and vote. We've had a work session, a lot of us have been here since 2 o'clock today, and we've had a work session prior to this and also documents sent to us to read and to discuss. We're not allowed to meet. 3 supervisors cannot meet without advertising it, so we have to talk as individuals to each other about these items. But many of us have discussed these items ahead of time, and obviously we've discussed them today during the work session.
Thank you, Mr. Blackstock. Is there any other discussion from any board member? Yes, sir, Mr.
I guess
Scares.
there's some confusion. I thought we were going to discuss the recommendation on the nursery designation too. Was that, I guess Mr. Farmer saying it was tabled?
No, I sent out an email today. We're gonna have another
I didn't see it.
legislative committee, hopefully the first week of March, and that will be brought to the full board in March. There are a couple items that that were requested at the legislative meeting that we bring back some language. One was the expansion of the exemptions for personal property, taxation, clarification of the definition of farming to assist nurseries in our community. There was a potential grass and weed ordinance. There was a potential revision to the inoperable motor vehicles, which would allow fewer in R1 zoned properties. There was also, Mr. Slimp is going to hopefully be bringing back the fire and rescue ordinance. I sent an email today asking if anybody else had anything to be on there. We're going to have a legislative committee meeting to examine the drafted language that staff has come up with, hopefully the first week in March. And then that will be on the March board meeting for a recommendation on a public hearing following.
So no action tonight.
There's no action tonight.
Correct.
I have reached out to the citizen. I've spoken to the citizen that this affects, and they understand what's going on.
Thank you.
Good job, Counselor. Any other discussion? Hearing none?
All right, please cast your vote. All right, all votes have been cast. I'm going to close the vote.
Item stands approved. Moving now to item B, Pet Center budget approval. Ms.
Yeah.
Kimberly G. Vanderhyde.
You got an item added.
This is going to be after this.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's C. We're going to add that C.
Again, we are bringing the Pet Center budget for approval, and this is a transfer of funds from already existing funds in our FY19 budget. We have discussed and we have worked on this budget now for a couple of months, and what we are seeking is $437,831 for the period January 1 to June 30. The transfer would come from existing funds in our animal services budget and from the CPMT budget. So it's from those two line items that we would be taking those funds to cover this 6-month period.
Thank you, Ms. Vanderhyde. What's the board's pleasure?
I make a motion to approve the attached Pet Center budget as presented in the amount of $437,831 and approve the transfers as listed above.
Thank you, Mr. Blackstock. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Scarce. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to commend James on his work of putting this all together. I would say I really wish that several years ago, when this board reached out and requested that some of the programs you've even suggested be looked into and implemented, and some of the fundraising process had gotten started even before the construction phase began. I think we would not be in the situation we're in today. So I applaud you for those efforts. It was refreshing to hear that at the work session, and hopefully those things will come to fruition that you've experienced in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to tell James that I have complete confidence in what you're doing out at the Pet Center, and I'm looking forward to what you're going to be able to do with the fundraising. I think having someone to coordinate that is going to be so important for the county, and I believe the people will show up where they haven't in the past. I think with your leadership, they will, and I appreciate all the work you're doing out there.
Thank you, Mr. Scarce. Any further discussion? Hearing none?
Please cast your vote. All right, all votes have been cast. I will now end the vote.
Item passes with 4 yeas and 3 noes. Counselor, did you say something about a C to be added to this?
We have 14C about the tires. Ms. McCluster, will you just read that item to the board, please?
Yes, that was to allow Mr. Aubrey J. Knuckles to deliver tires from Whitefall Farm in the Bannister District at the county landfill for only the county cost of disposing of the tires.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to allow Mr. Aubrey J. Knuckles to deliver those tires from Whitehall Farm in the Bannister District at the county landfill for only the county cost of disposal of the tires.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Blackstock, seconded by Mr. Barber. Is there any discussion? Hearing none?
Please cast your vote. All votes have been cast. I will now end the vote.
Passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 15, board member reports. Mr. Barber.
Me? Sir, I'd just like to thank the county, all the community, all the board for all the love shown to my family during the death of my mother. I was sitting there, I realized why I serve on this board. I mean, it was amazing, the people in the neighborhood that come out and called and come by, and it was a very hard time for the family, but I thank everybody, especially the board, for your emails and visits and cards. And anybody's ever experienced knows you lose your mother, that's your best friend in life. That's my biggest fan I had on earth, and I appreciate everything.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. Mr. Blackstock?
I'd like to again say thank you to the board, to Mr. Smitherman, Mr. Moore, Mr. Warren for his part, and for making a dream come true for northern Pittsylvania County. We don't have a park or a library really that was functional north of Groton. And I see this as one step in the right direction in making us feel included. And this board has went out of its way to make that happen. I also attended, I won't draw this out, but the Hurt Fire Department annual banquet Saturday night, instead of taking my wife to a Valentine dinner. And it's amazing to me what so many dedicated volunteers do in our community and how much time they put in. They actually had a call during the banquet, their annual banquet, and several of them had to get up and leave and answer the call. And on our way home, my wife and I, after the banquet, we ran up on an automobile accident at the compactor site in Grit, where somebody cut a utility pole in half and the wires were dangling. And there was a young man that had just got up in the middle of their annual banquet to be recognized for their dedication and what they do. They were standing out there in the cold, doing what they do. And I went home that night and I thought about how many hours, not only of training, but of what they do for us and what it would cost us if we didn't have them. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to all volunteers, but we saw it firsthand Saturday night, and the banquet was excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Blackstock. Mr. Farmer?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Since we met last, the Stanton River RIFA was formed, and just to be a part of that and see the collaborative effort between local communities coming together, it's just a statement for the direction I believe that this county's headed, and to just be working alongside people instead of against them, I think sends a powerful message. And just earlier today, we met with the school board concerning budget matters, and just to be able to have the ability to speak openly and publicly about the needs for our citizens and our children, our students, and our teaching staff. One of their comments they made was, "We understand you may not have all the funds, but at least you're listening."
Yeah.
And that was pretty powerful for me to just realize that just the working togetherness that I see each and every day is just really great.
Thank you, Mr. Farmer. Dr. Miller?
Yes, sir. A couple of items. First of all, I want to say thank you to Mr. Blackstock for being a part of the discussion about the gentleman with the tires down in the Bannister district. I was not aware at first that the gentleman who contacted me had contacted other members of the board, but I'm glad he did, and I appreciate the cooperation from Mr. Blackstock. Also, in terms of fire and rescue, I believe I've made it clear to those people that I know work in that capacity that this is a matter that's near and dear to my heart, and I'm going to be working with other members of the board here during this budgetary season to make sure that they get a good look at what they need, and hopefully we're able to fund that in a way that will be beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Mr. Warren? No, excuse me, Mr. Scares. I'm trying to do this in alphabetical order, that's all. Sorry.
Okay. I just want to invite everyone. We have a Friends of NRA banquet coming up on February the 28th. Doors open at 5:30, and if you enjoy a good meal and the chance to win a whole lot of weapons, I think we've got about 300 or so that are going to be raffled off in different games. It's a really good time for those that support the NRA, but just to let you know, all the funds that we garner from this banquet go directly to the shooting sports here in our county. Whether it's the Boy Scouts or even the high schools, we support a lot of the ROTCs and their shooting programs. So to me, this has always been real important to me, and I've been involved with this probably since I moved back home in 2005. So if you guys want tickets, I have some tickets still available for this function, and I hope to see you there if you decide to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scarce. I do apologize for looking over you. I've only made 2 mistakes tonight, so I'm batting at 90%.
Four gun rounds.
Mr. Fitzgerald, so I know you're keeping score. Now, Mr. Warren.
Mr. Chairman, I just would echo Mr. Farmer's comments about the collaborative effort and what a pleasure it is to see everyone trying to work together. We may not always agree, or we may not always have enough money to spread it every way we want to, but at least we're all willing to listen to one another and each other's ideas and opinions as we try to move the county
in the proper direction. And we certainly hope we're doing that, and we'd ask that you keep us in your thoughts and prayers as we try to serve you. And don't hesitate to reach out to us. And most of all, everybody be safe going home tonight and tomorrow, as it looks like we're going to get some bad weather. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And I would conclude, I want to appreciate Mr. Kevin, who is the eye in the sky for me. Him and the young man down there, my other friend, have done a wonderful job of trying to keep me computer fiscally responsible. I do appreciate that. We've had a lot of ups and downs with this. Thank you. I want to thank all the staff. I want to thank the county attorney, county administrator, Ms. Vanderhyde, Mr. Hicks. Yeah, you even showed up today. Ms. Kaylin McCluster, Mr. Sides, young man for our animal shelter, and I'd like to thank the sheriff we got back there, Mr. Mike Taylor. Appreciate the job that they always do, always standing up. Well, like this young man that served the opportunity on the planning commission, very insightful. I appreciate the folk that are in place, as well as the board of supervisors that I believe are leading this county in the direction it should go. It's not easy. It takes a lot of guts. This position is not for the weak of heart or the faint of heart. And as Mr. Warren says, we're going to have disagreements, and we certainly are. I promise you that. Because there's a whole lot of things I don't agree with. I don't even agree with myself a lot of times when I wake up in the morning. Ask my wife. So, but nevertheless, that's the way you progress, is through tension and through pressure. It's called a crucible. That's where we meet in the middle. And I do appreciate that. I enjoy the struggle. It's not easy, but that's the way it is, and I do appreciate it. Thank the staff as well from our news media. They always do a great job of reporting information to help us as well as to help the community, to inform the community through instruction and education. That is a big plus for us. We have some of the best, I do believe, in media. And no, I'm not asking for a soundbite either. They know me. So moving on, thank you so kindly. Be safe tonight. We hope to see you guys next month. I'd like to ask our staff, the county administrator, you have any reports, sir?
Yes, sir. I want to echo what Mr. Blackstock said. The Wayside Park project began not quite, about a year ago, less than 18 months ago, as a very modest repair mission to Wayside Park, and has since become a vision that Mr. Moore has articulated in a way that has garnered additional financial support. And I think we've always believed Wayside Park was an untapped resource and a great jewel of the community, but I think now it is really going to become a showpiece for the entirety of Pittsylvania County. And I hope a stopping point for folks to stop on their travels up 29 and enjoy Pittsylvania County. Earlier today, the board got the official presentation of our employee satisfaction survey. Got the results originally about Christmas time, but we finally made public those results and made a presentation today. We conducted this survey in early November, and we learned a lot about the things that matter to our employees, and our leadership team, a group of 5 department managers, are plotting a course to help improve our working conditions with our employees' help over the next year. We hope this is the beginning of an annual product where we can start gauging our progress toward improving our workplace. We also received tonight a solid waste report from Mr. Hicks. It's a final summation of our pilot period, which was approximately 6 months, where we controlled access and manned 5 different sites. We improved our recycling options, we changed our hours at the landfill, and we learned a lot. What we learned, what we heard tonight is that what we're doing is working. We're going to tweak some things for cost reasons, but also for efficiency reasons. And we're going to expand this, or propose expanding this program as we go into the next year. We're learning that our enforcement efforts are keeping abuse down, it's keeping our tonnages down, which is reducing wear and tear on trucks, reducing fuel usage, and providing for more clean and productive sites. So we're going to continue what we're doing there, and we hope people will continue to see positive results in our solid waste collection system. We also heard a brief, spent an hour on some of the challenges of this year's budget. A year ago, if any of us, especially Kim and I, were here talking about the coming 12 months out fiscal year, we would have said things will be better. It turns out that we had so many unforeseen challenges this year that are costing hundreds of thousands of dollars, particularly before we even started this fiscal year, the news that our emergency management service backup contract was changing. We've experienced a lot of costs. We have a lot of challenges ahead. We have priorities around improving our sheriff's office employee pay, around improving our collections and some outstanding billings, and several other items that the board has expressed its priorities. And Kim and I will be working on that. And 2 weeks from today, we'll be presenting you a proposed balanced budget for FY20 and handing it to you and starting to figure out where there are differences and how we can produce a document and a funding scenario that meets, sufficiently meets the majority of our needs. Finally, I'll say I've been slightly distracted. I've texted with Sheriff Taylor. He must be texting me right now, as well as our clerk, Mark Scarce, and Chris Slimp. We are expecting poor weather after midnight tonight, and Mr. Slimp recommends a 2-hour delay tomorrow morning because of accumulation of ice on the roads. So we will be broadcasting that to the public after this meeting, 2 hours later. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Smitherman. How about you, Mr. Counselor?
Nothing.
I want to thank you for your expertise tonight in more ways than one. Thank you, and I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. And I'm going to close this at 8:14. I make the adjournment.